Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Super Mario Galaxy part 14? Part 14. Fellas, welcome back. Hey, as of the time that I'm recording this, fellas, it has been a week since the Switch 2 Direct aired. There was actually a very large gap in between the last episode and now, simply just because, do you guys remember in episode 12, okay? In episode 12, are they gonna make me do this now? Why are they making me do this now? I'm actually kind of confused. Okay, so we have a cosmic comment to do. But fellas, if you remember in episode 12, I had cited that I was having a bit of an itchy throat, and I had some stuff going on with that, and that I had mildly gotten under the weather, and everything was okay. It was all good, nothing to worry about, and then after episode 13, I was going to come back next day, whatever, I was going to record. So I don't think you need me to tell you that that didn't happen. I don't think you need me to tell you that didn't happen. Essentially, my sickness had evolved to it wasn't, okay, look, I didn't have serious stuff going on, but it was enough of a sickness to the point where I just could not record. There was no shot I was recording, right? That was essentially the point that I had gotten up to. I started feeling especially bad maybe the day after the Switch 2 Direct aired. It's around April 3rd, right? So a little less than a week ago. And man, when I tell you guys, it was a rough experience, and it was weird. Again, I literally, I didn't know if I was going to be able to watch the Switch 2 Direct. I basically, I was planning to watch the Switch 2 Direct live with friends, which I did end up doing, but I wasn't sure if I was actually going to get to do it because my body genuinely, I did not know if I was going to need that rest or whatnot, but I was having basically one of those types of sickness where it's like enough of an intrusion that like you kind of can't fall asleep, if that makes any sense. That was sort of what I was encountering, and it was just not a fun time. Now that being said, like I said, I did watch the Switch 2 Direct. During this whole recording session between this episode and the next, or if I record any other episodes after this, I want to talk about it a bit with you guys because there's a lot that people are talking about right now with this. A lot of good things that people are seeing in the console. But there is one glaring issue that I don't think I would be the first to point out. I'm just going to get it out of the way. The price of the game. Oh my god. What? Like, what are they doing? For those who somehow are not in the loop, Nintendo, and this was also the big reason why a lot of people were not very happy. Nintendo, during the whole Direct, they did not talk about price of the price of the console or the price of the games that they were announcing. This was very strange. Obviously, I don't think you need me to tell you that that's extremely strange to do, right? Especially when this is not like something that Nintendo has done before. With the Switch 1, they gave us that upfront information. And so, it turns out that the console itself is going to be $450, okay? At least here in the US. Of course, I want to clarify I'm in the US, so things are obviously going to be adjusted for that when I talk about all this stuff, right? Now, I'm going to be real. There are some people, it's not a lot, but there are some people that don't exactly vibe with the $450 price point. And I think most people that don't vibe with that are simply coming from the fact that when you actually compare this, I really, I don't think I'm supposed to get a fire flower around here, but most people who are seeing that $450 price tag are people who owned a Switch 1. The Switch 1's MSRP, I believe, is $300. So that is a $150 price increase, and it's a huge jump, honestly, for Nintendo. That's a huge price jump for Nintendo specifically. They are, a lot of analysts were thinking that the Switch 2 was simply just going to be a $50 price increase. So people figured that what Nintendo was going to do was that they were going to go up to $400. That's what I thought they were going to do, for sure. That's not what they ended up doing. They ended up going to $450. And here's what I'm going to say about it, okay? It's a bit steeper than what we're used to Nintendo doing, at least in terms of a general price increase. We knew there was going to be a price increase, but we didn't know how bad it was going to be. Hey, where, what are we doing here? Why do I not just, like, remember? Oh, wait a minute. Do you have to... Wait a minute. Okay, man. Okay, man. That's really cool. But yeah, so it's a steeper price increase. However, if any of you were there for the Switch 2 Direct, you may remember they pointed out some pretty huge details about this console, which is that for the first time in probably ages, ever since maybe the GameCube or the Wii, Nintendo is kind of caring about hardware a little bit, just like a hair. Ooh. Are we for real? Oh, it hit. Okay. But yeah, for the first time in ages, Nintendo is actually caring about hardware. 4K docked support is crazy. I remember back when I've talked about this before, back when the Switch 1 trailer came out and I was covering all that stuff and I was talking about the leaks and everything that had come out prior, which I think were the whole reason that Nintendo even made that first look trailer to begin with. You know, obviously a big talking point during that, and this was more of a rumor, was that Nintendo was going to do... Okay, man. Nintendo was going to do 4K dock support, and I immediately looked at that and said, look, I understand that everything up to this point, leak-wise, about this console has been true. Mind you, that 4K dock support rumor was not a leak, that was a rumor. But I simply looked at that and I'm like, 4K Nintendo? Are we for real? Are we for real right now? Like, in my mind, Nintendo was not in any universe ever going to be doing 4K. That was just a simple fact that I had told myself. And my God, we were wrong. Yeah, we're getting 4K dock support on a Nintendo console. What? They've also upgraded the screen itself in handheld to a 1080p display. Now, I would like to clarify, this does not mean the baseline for every single game in handheld is immediately going to run at 1080. Okay, I'd like to make that very clear. I believe Cyberpunk 2077, which was a game that was announced for the Switch 2. Again, crazy example of what kind of games we're running now. I believe Cyberpunk is targeting... Ooh. Okay, I thought I was just low-key dead there. Cyberpunk is actually targeting 720p, I believe. It's either that or maybe Metroid Prime 4 in handheld is targeting 720p, with the big caveat, and this is another thing as well, the Switch 2 can actually go up to, oh God, what is it? The Switch 2... Are we for real right now? Bro, just angle... Okay, man. Okay, man. Alright, man. This is so cool. Go. Do it like that. Are we for real? Okay, hold on. It's jank, but listen. If it works, it works, right? If it works, it works. Oh! Oh! Gimme! I so thought I was dead there. I'm just gonna be so for real with you. I thought I was dead there. But, yeah, so you have all these crazy hardware specs that they're increasing. So, I, myself, and a lot of people, right, are like, whoa, that's a bit steeper than expected. But it's kind of acceptable. It's acceptable because of what you're being given hardware-wise. What you're being given hardware-wise is kind of a huge upgrade compared to the original Switch. Let's make that very clear. But I think another thing really worth pointing out, and this is the part that people don't like, is the game prices. So the game prices are a bit of a conundrum that Nintendo is encountering right now. And I want to preface this by saying that Nintendo's justification, at least as of what they've released so far, regarding game prices for the Switch 2 is that they're going to be doing variable game pricing, which is not necessarily a new concept for Nintendo. I want to make that very clear. It was not as much of a thing they did during the Switch 1, where during the Switch 1 they had a bit more of a standardized price that they put on things. It was usually $60 at the utmost, which typically a lot of times that $60 was a bit much, right? I've talked about the Luigi's Mansion 2 remake being a bit much on the price front. It's a little much on the price front, but, you know, it is what it is, right? But Nintendo didn't really ever stray from that $60, and sometimes that was kind of a detriment, right? Sometimes that was kind of a detriment because there were a lot of things that they would release for $60 that had no business being $60, right? Now, I'm going to be completely real with you. I don't know if I see that problem necessarily being fixed before. Now, okay, another thing worth mentioning, and this is something I think very much worth keeping in mind about the Switch 1. If you guys remember, there was approximately one example on the Switch 1 of a game being anywhere above $60, and that was The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom was a $70 game, which was a very specific niche case that Nintendo did. They did this because they felt that Tears of the Kingdom was worth the price tag, right? And it was, I swear to God, I don't know exactly if this was the case, but I do remember them also citing as well that, it was them testing the waters, right? And a lot of people saw this and were not particularly happy, right? They were not particularly happy because, whoa, Nintendo, what are you doing actually pushing the $70 stuff? And Nintendo had made it a point to say that this was going to be a very one-off case example, right? This was going to be a very one-off case example, which it did end up being. It did end up being a one-off case example, and Tears of the Kingdom, I believe, was the only game, at least especially in the first parties, it was the only first-party game, and potentially the only game on the Switch, to release for a $70 MSRP. So keep this in mind, because now, with the Switch 2, we've had a bit of an interesting thing happen. The Switch 2 is obviously doing the more variable system of game pricing, but there's also some interesting stuff happening. So let me tell you exactly what I'm observing right now regarding the prices. It appears as if Nintendo has a somewhat base game price on the Switch 2, which is looking like it might be $70. Which, obviously, I think... Okay, so I didn't know where I was going there. Let's just get that straight out of the gate, but I know where I'm going this time. So obviously, this is a price increase. This is a $10 price increase, and it is meeting up to what the rest of the video game industry is kind of doing for their big full-price MSRP stuff. Good God, I was about to say, you better fix yourself, camera. But it is kind of matching up to what the rest of the industry is doing with their MSRP, right? And they're going up to $70. I think, and I'm going to be real with you, I think if they did that and that alone, I would still be a little like, oh, I don't love it. But I think it is tolerable. Okay? I think it is tolerable. The problem is regarding a certain game they announced. Well, they didn't announce this game, okay? This game has kind of been talked about, right? Mario Kart World, the brand new Mario Kart game that we have been seeing a bunch of information about. People love how it looks. Frick. Okay. People love how it looks, myself included. This is an open world Forza Horizon-esque Mario Kart, and I will probably not get around to talking about my feelings on the game itself this episode, but I will probably talk about it in the next episode, right? Ooh. I'll probably talk about it more in the next episode, just on a more positive note. So, people were excited about this game. It was really, really cool. The game price, while it wasn't talked about in the Direct itself, the game price came out after the Direct, okay? The game price came out after the Direct. Mario Kart World is going for an MSRP here in the US of $80. Oh. So, I think this is a very interesting talking point. I think this is a very interesting talking point to talk about because something worth mentioning, and I've seen some people say this, I've seen some people say, oh, well, games have been $80 before. Not standard editions of games. The only games that have been $80 up to this point have been deluxe or premium editions of $60 or $70 games. So let's get that abundantly clear. Let's get that straight out of the way, right? Let's get that straight out of the way. I'm going to do one more star this episode because I figured we actually had a little time. But let's get that out of the way. Standard editions of video games to this point have not ever been $80, okay? So Nintendo is the first to set a $80 price tag on a standard edition video game. And I want to clarify again, because I know some people were saying this, what about during the N64 era where there were these huge variable price tags and some of them were reaching upwards of $100? This was back when things were a lot more variable and things were a lot less of a consistent price in the video game economy. Nowadays, what you typically see in the video game economy is that there is much more of an upwards price tag on video games, okay? You see a lot more of an upwards price tag on video games, and typically, those price tags are kind of aiming for a, for a long time, when in the early 2000s, they were kind of in the 50s, and then around the 2010s or so, maybe late 20s, early 2010s, they moved over to doing a... Okay, cool. No! I kind of want those star bits. Hold on. Okay, cool. Yeah, but around the late 20s, the late 2000s and the early 2010s, they moved their price points up to 60, okay? And then towards the late 2010s, maybe early 2020s, right? A few years ago, we moved over to 70, okay? And a lot of this has to just kind of do with inflation-based stuff, right? This has just kind of been the general reason. It's just been kind of an adjustment with inflation. Sick. Awesome. But Nintendo has now moved things up to 80. In a time where it actually seems awfully strange to randomly move up to 80, by the way. This doesn't really feel like a... I mean, I just kind of ran into that. I don't really know what to tell you. But it kind of feels like a weirdly unprecedented time to move up to an $80 price tag, right? So people have been losing it over this. Losing it over this because this is just insane. This is just insane to randomly, especially of all things, Nintendo, to be the one to move up to this ridiculous price tag that a lot of people have straight up said, no, we're not doing that. Are you kidding? And I have seen multiple reasons as to why this could possibly be a thing. Now, Doug Bowser, president of, I think the Nintendo of America president, has gone on the record to say on a news outlet, okay, that the reason for this, and I'm sure a lot of this is probably, it was mainly worded in a bad wording because CEOs are very limited in what they can say, right? I think naturally the ways that CEOs have to navigate what they're going to say, they're never going to please anybody. with what they have to say. They cannot outright tell you, we put it at this price because of this political issue going on in the world. They can't tell you that sort of stuff, right? So that's kind of one thing to really get out of the way, but they basically said, ooh, I'm not dead though. That's kind of the crazy part. They kind of said in the most basic terms, we did this because we feel the features in the game justify the price. That's basically what they said. And that's not exactly shaping out to be the best answer in a lot of people's eyes, right? It's not exactly shaping out to be best answer in a lot of people's eyes, and understandably so. Okay, understandably so. And I remember, I think especially a lot of what Doug Bowser's reasoning was the social communication features, specifically stuff regarding the game chat thing that is exclusive to the Switch 2, which is what that whole C button was related to. I think we vaguely talked about it in some videos in the past, but yeah, he's very specifically cited social features, right? So stuff like game chat and all that, which, mind you, after March 31st, 2026, you will need the Nintendo Switch Online membership to do that. So it's kind of hard to put that into your price justification when not everyone is going to be able to use that. It's only going to be people who have an active Nintendo Switch Online membership. So I think that's really worth keeping in mind, but it's just kind of a mess. But I have a lot of listen, okay, I would like to clarify. First of all, that's going to do it for this episode of Super Mario Galaxy. But I would also like to point out, just real quick before we end the episode, that a lot of the Switch 2 stuff I'm probably going to talk about in the next episode is going to be a lot more of the positive stuff. A lot of the stuff I'm very excited about, because I'd like to make it very clear I'm very, very excited still for this console. But I would be a fool to not recognize that there is a lot of controversy that this console is currently getting wrapped up in regarding its launch. Pre-orders have been delayed in the US and Canada. So it's kind of, we're in a bit of an iffy spot, right? We're in a bit of an iffy spot, and the console launches on June 5th, which I am excited for, but there's a lot that I think Nintendo's going to have to work around. There's also some stuff regarding tariff stuff here in the US, which I will not touch on because that gets into more political territory, and I don't want to personally bring any of that energy, but it could have some impact on stuff. That being said, like I said, next episode, I'm going to be probably talking about some more, positive things and more of the things I'm really excited that I saw out of the Switch 2 Direct and everything that has come out of it with Nintendo Treehouse and everything going forward with that. So I'll probably talk about that in the next episode. These are, dude, this episode and the next are just going to be my pure banter machines for talking about the Switch 2. So get excited. Anyways, fellas, I'm going to go ahead and hop up on out of here. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and hop up on out of here. Fellas, if you enjoyed this video, maybe like, comment, subscribe. I don't know. It's your life. Do what you want. I don't really care. And I will see you fellas in the next video. Bye-bye, guys.